Carol, welcome to the conversation. Today, we're going to take a unique look at suicide, and you're going to share a story with us, are you not?
I am.
What's that story all about?
Thank you, Keith. It's great to be here with you once again and to be speaking to your audience. I've given this a lot of thought because I feel the emotion coming. I've not had a conversation like we're going to have today. So I'm going to start this way, and you and I did not rehearse. And I'm going to say that this is when my healing from my father's suicide on January 20th, 1995 started to change. I turned 67 a few years ago. I do not usually divulge my age, but for helping other people, I thought it was the right way to start. My birthday is September 25th, and about a few months, a month or so before my 67th birthday, which I must add is the age my father was when he killed himself. And that really is the target of what I'm about to say. And leading up to my 67th birthday, I started having anxiety about the birthday. And I thought, am I going to kill myself on my 67th birthday or after? Is there something that's going to happen to me that is triggered that I'm not aware of? And when the day started to get closer, about a week before, I said to myself, I understand now. And that was doing the work leading up to it, which was a lot of deep dive thinking and prayer. And I realized that what my father did on my 67th birthday was hand me a baton. And he said, I could only go this far. The rest of the years that you're on this earth are going to be the best of your life. And I need you to step up and speak up. And I believe that that is the significance of us being here today. It's taken me these few years to get past 67, and the opportunity that you're offering me to speak to your audience and say, I am here to help who is listening, and as are you, in any way we can. So on January 20th, 1995, my 18-year-old brother called me to tell me, because my dad was remarried and had my brother with my stepmother, called to tell me about my dad's death. And I can tell you to this day that I'm still in shock, that doing this podcast and this work with you is for as long as I'm on this planet, healing, because it's nothing that's ever left me. My father was a football player from the time he was born in 1927. So whenever you start Pee Wee football, whatever that means back then, they wore leather helmets. And without, going into the story, which we will as you ask me questions, back in the day when my dad was a football player and then went to Dartmouth College and was a football, they had their heads bashed onto the ground. Unlike today where you have protection, your head was, and my grandmother, I'm told, would be in the stands saying, when's he going back in? And the kid had a concussion. So my brothers believe that my father had CTE, the brain disease, which really led to the depression. I'm also told, because nobody talked about anything in those days, really starting when he was 30. So that means for about 37 years, my father was suffering or holding everything inside, and nobody knew except my mother, his ex-wife, and a very close friend. And I did not learn it until the day he died. So I know that we'll weave this tapestry together as we talk, but for this moment, there was not the discussion of mental illness leading up to 1995. For those of you who know football, it was the Lombardi era, the coach, they didn't even drink Gatorade or water on the field. My dad fainted playing in a singles tennis tournament and lost 11 pounds because he drank no water. Like that was his generation. Now here we are today on the cusp of having conversations like this to help people. We have got to raise our voices. We have got to raise our consciousness. We have got to save lives. And that's why I am here today with you.
Well, Carol, first, thank you. Let's take a step back because earlier you said the impact of a relative or close friend's suicide, your dad's suicide, never leaves you. What exactly does that mean? I know for practical purposes, that means you always have that idea, that thought in your head, but I'm thinking there's a bit more to that statement that it never leaves you.
There's so much. My dad's wife is a German, and so there's not emotion. There was no note. There was no lead-in knowledge. I mean, I saw him the week before because my grandmother was also dying. She was 95. And on the ride home from the hospital, by the way, she didn't die. She waited for 3 weeks after he died. It was a very Freudian, weird time. But on the way home from the hospital that night, my dad started telling me what a failure he was. So clearly, again, the consciousness I have now would have, I mean, I did feel that emotion afterwards, but in the moment, I would never have imagined that here we would be 20 some years later having this conversation. So no, it never leaves you because my dad was my everything. Like if I say and I don't know if everybody would answer this that way, but I believe that my parents loved me, my mother's still alive at 93, loved me unconditionally. And I had as close a relationship to my father as I believed I could at that time. Looking back, and understanding what we know now, almost 30 years later, it would be very different because we, again, have a different consciousness. But to answer your question is, I've gone to therapy, but not to grief counseling or anything like that, to talk about it. It rocked the foundation of my life. The one person who I knew was always there for me was gone. And that's the part, because you can see the emotions coming. Like, how do you replace that? And I think you don't. I'm grateful for the 41 or however many years it was that I was on this earth with him. But maybe another way to answer it is we all think we have control, right? We brush our teeth, we get dressed, like you can kind of say what you're going to do in a day. When someone in your heart, your love, your family, your friend, your husband, wife, brother, sister, take their lives, there is no control. There's no definition. There's no answer. There's no how do you even explain that? And I think you can go to therapy, but what if the therapist hasn't experienced suicide? Like this kind of conversation, because you attempted suicide, you can speak to it. You're willing to share about it. And we live in a world right now that is, I'm going to say, out of control. So what do I do to deal with that? I meditate, I pray, I read, I talk to you. I am trying to express myself so that people know that they're not alone. And as I said to you right before we started this, the body keeps the score. And I'm finding things out this many years later about my body that trauma has done to me. And none of it is life-threatening. It could have been, but it was caught in time. But little things, here's a little example. Everybody go check your under your fingernails or the top of your, like, you can be impacted from trauma in ways that you're not even aware. So I don't know if I've answered your question yet, because I feel like I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but go ahead.
You have. In all aspects of the conversation that I have with people surrounding suicide, you are not alone. Everybody has communicated the same story when it's somebody that they knew, whether a friend, family, it doesn't matter. There's always the question of why. And so, because we tend to understand from our own perspective that life has value, meaning, and purpose, and when somebody is to the point where that's gone and they don't see that anymore, and they take that next step and their life is gone, yes, everybody who's left in the wake of that is changed forever. You're also correct in saying that because I've had conversations with grief coaches, trauma experts, and for what it's worth, energy healers, the body does keep score. Always has, always will. And it's really a shame that here, and we're here in America, so we are surrounded by what we call Western or modern medicine, that everything is handled through a pharmaceutical medication rather than the natural components of the body, including its energy, its spirit, its mind, and things like that. So there's more of a holistic approach to how somebody can deal with trauma, grief, because when you don't allow it, and this is from the simple just sharing your emotion, just crying or being angry or whatever that emotional outlet is, it's going to be okay as long as it's done in a safe space. Yeah, the body can develop physical ailments, emotional frustrations, maladaptive behaviors, or even thinking strategies that go awry. You are absolutely correct. The body does keep score. So, with that, in the time since then, you have made, because you said so, it changes you. Talk about the healing, if any, that you've gone through in order for you to step into this conversation and say, Keith, I'm ready to talk about it.
My father's death fragmented our family. The family was, there was, I mean, there's already divorce, yeah? So there was already fragmentation, and then there was another level, and then my grandmother's death. And so this may sound odd, but I don't think so. I through avenues like this and through speaking with healers, really since turning 67, it's a long time from when my father died in 1995, the healing, I'm going to say it this way. I've been more ready. Is that bad English? I've been ready to heal. I have chosen to heal now, to face the pain. And it actually started probably 2019, maybe around that time when my friend Bob's son died from a fentanyl heroin overdose. And we started to meet with heads of the Suicide Foundation in Washington, D.C. And It seemed too clinical to me,
Mhm.
the way that they were like having a march and a walk out of in DC at the, I felt like, no, this isn't enough. I need to find my voice. And now here we are today. Um, it's the, since a number of my friends have lost their children to overdoses. And it's the word that keeps coming to me or to us is wellness, is not going into a building for recovery, but going, my friend Bob is going to be opening up, hopefully in the years to come, sooner than later, a wellness place where people can go, and it, however long it takes, there's going to be a lot of money behind it, where people can go for suicide, for drug addiction, for a place to get well. And I think my my hope and prayers every single day is to be a part of that. You and I have talked about other things that you're doing. And I think we can all sit here and, you know, shoot off the statistics of suicide deaths or fentanyl deaths. And it's actually mind-boggling. So to me, the only answer is, what do we do to change things? How do we bring people together through conversations like this to reach people and let them know what you just said? There's a lot of people that have gone through what I've gone through.
Mhm.
I did an exercise on the date of my dad's death on January 20th, and this came through a healer. And she said, and she didn't tell me what day to do it. It just happened that I did it on January 20th. I wrote down how I felt the day my dad died, afterwards, and right now. And I just, my pen moved, my brain moved, and it was 3 pages long, and I put it in a bowl and burned it. And she told me that I had to begin to heal, and I had to get all of that out of me,
Mhm.
and to just spill my guts. And I think, again, that's why doing something like this, to let people know that you're not alone. You're not. And even though I do not plan on taking my life, I want to use my father's death and what you and other people have gone through to save lives. And as we talk, I don't have the answer. I only have the hand of hope that people can hold and talk to, and know that there are platforms and avenues, and there's so many people that want to help one another now.
Which is part of the answer. So there isn't just a word or a sentence or a phrase that solves. There's no panacea. There's no one panacea. But what you said, your friend Bob, and the word wellness are changing the landscape of society. And so like we had a conversation prior to, clicking the record button. I'm no longer in the belief, and I have a mental health background, not clinical, but I was a professional mental health provider in North Carolina for many years after my first college days. At this point, and at the time of this recording, it is 2024. Suicide is no longer, it can't be considered just a mental health problem. It is a societal problem because it's impacting every age, every gender, race, global situation. Life is at a critical point. The human race is at a critical point. We could acknowledge it, we can acknowledge it. For those of us who do, we have to start changing with the vocabulary. Wellness is a good place to start. Holistic wellness, holistic healing. We got to start changing how we think about each other, how we use words, how we have conversations, and how we make ourselves available. Just what you're doing, what your friend Bob is doing. You are making yourselves available and say, hey, yes, this is real. Yes, I've experienced something similar. Yes, I may not have all of the answers, but together we can find them. And that's how the conversation changes. So kudos to you and your friend for starting that snowball effect.
Well, he's a father of 6 children, and this was his oldest child who suffered after his first divorce.
Yeah.
And he never recovered. And he was dead at 33 with a woman he had divorced and 2 little kids,
Mm.
and he just kept, he would, he would get, he would stop the drugs and then get involved with bad people. And what's coming to me as we're talking is the word purpose. As you just said, we're in the beginning of 2024. And I thought of this before we spoke today. And I thought, what a blessing it is to be starting the year with you, having this conversation. I I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. None of us do. And I can also say what the guy I heard say in the podcast that I listened to before we talked. I have more years behind me than I do ahead of me. So what am I going to do to share my wisdom, my traumas, my experiences to help other people? What is my life's purpose? Why am I here? And that's what I would say to people listening today, whether they've experienced suicide, have thought about it, or have lost a family member and want to help other people. We are on this planet to find what our purpose is. And that's what's come to me over these years since my dad's death. My purpose has grown stronger and stronger and stronger. And now I have my voice. And that's what I would say, along with what you just said with the word wellness, is how do we take wellness and make it purposeful to heal? Because the system is not healing people. It's not. It's and I don't want to be negative. I don't want to go down that road. I want to stay with wellness and let people know why we're doing this. And that's to help save lives and to reach other people so that they can save lives. I guess that's that word viral. How do we take this viral? How do we reach millions of people with our voices and we come together to save each other? Because the more people that have a common thought and a common positive energy, it's palpable. And then it just keeps reaching others.
I totally agree. And so I don't want to go too much further in this conversation except to add one final thought, and then we'll go ahead and conclude. Sharing your message today, sharing it tomorrow, sharing it throughout this year and beyond. How do you feel? How do you think this is going to impact your life as you grow and share your voice?
At the risk of starting to cry again, it helps me honor my father's memory and the memories of the people who I meet along this way from you, with you, and beyond today. And to know that my dad's life and his death was not in vain. And because I really do believe that when we lose someone or we go through these traumas, we have to turn them or around. I don't know if that's a hip way to talk. We have to make them into something that will heal, because and this is really how I've led my life, isn't it? And we had this discussion maybe when we first met. You can either go down, you can fall apart, and you too can get sick or die, Or you can go deep inside and you can find your triumph. And that's the best answer to your question is I know that my dad's death has anointed me. I've taken that baton and I'm running our race. My dad's, mine, yours, and everyone that we're going to meet along the way.
I love the metaphor, and there's no better way to end this conversation. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank
For
you,
the
Keith.
for those of you who are watching and listening, I'll see you next time. Take care.